much. Welcome to this presentation. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to just provide a small introduction to the context of education in the Caribbean. So I'm not going to talk about my own research today because this is only going to be a brief presentation and an introduction to, let's say, what the real experts have to share with us about education in the Caribbean. So let me see. First of all, it's important to point out the political context because today we're talking about 6 islands in the Caribbean that are part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So actually we're talking about 2 separate island groups. On the one hand, there's the Dutch Windward Islands in the northern part of the Caribbean, Saba, St. Eustatius and St. Martin, which are also known as the SSS Islands. In the southern part of the Caribbean, we find the Dutch Leeward Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, Curaçao, also known as the ABC Islands, and the 6 islands are part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So here is a map to show you where the 2 island groups actually are. And as you see, they're quite far away from each other because the distance between the northern and the southern island group is more or less 1,000 kilometers. Okay, so sketching the political context very briefly, the 6 islands formed together the Netherlands Antilles from the year 1954, and this was acknowledged in the statute for the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So the 6 islands formed, let's say, an autonomous country, and at the time the kingdom consisted of 2 countries. So one, the European Netherlands, or Holland, where we are now, and the 6 islands forming the Netherlands Antilles. So a first important step in this political situation was the year 1986, when Aruba obtained the status aparte, meaning that it became an autonomous country within the kingdom. So from that moment on, the kingdom consisted of 3 countries, one of them being Aruba. And then, of course, more radical, let's say, was the year 2010, when the Netherlands Antilles actually dissolved. So the Netherlands Antilles don't exist as a country anymore. And this, of course, had a lot of implications. So looking at the political context right now, which is referred to as 10-10-10, October 10th, 2010, we see actually that there are 3 autonomous countries. Aruba already had a status aparte, but Curaçao and St. Martin, the larger islands, are also autonomous countries within the kingdom. Whereas the smaller islands, Bonaire, St. Eustatius and Saba, nowadays are public entities. In Dutch referred to as openbare lichamen, and this compares to special municipalities of the European part of the Netherlands. So this, of course, has a lot of implications because, well, within the political system and in the legal system, they're just like Breda, Amsterdam or Utrecht, right? And their government is in The Hague. And this, of course, had a lot of implications that started from 10-10-10. Okay. Talking very briefly about the language situation, we also see that here there's a very clear distinction between the 2 island groups. Because the northern islands, or in the northern part of the Caribbean, use English as the main home language, or the majority language. So this holds for Saba, St. Martin and St. Eustatius. And in the linguistic literature, these varieties are actually referred to as English lexifier Creoles, meaning that Creole languages, of course, are mixed languages that have been derived during, let's say, periods of language contact, and English lexifier simply means that the vocabulary derives mainly from English. The case of the ABC Islands is quite different because there the main home language, or the majority language, is Papiamento in Aruba, Papiamentu in Bonaire and Curaçao. So these 2 varieties are mutually intelligible, but they are referred to with slightly different names, Papiamento, Papiamentu. And this language is actually also a Creole language derived from, let's say, language contact situations, and it's Spanish-Portuguese lexifier Creole in the sense that the vocabulary mainly comes from Spanish and Portuguese. Up until 2003, the language situation was quite simple if you look at, let's say, the legal and political framework, because Dutch was the only officially recognized language on the 6 islands. And this changed in the year 2003, because first on Aruba, Papiamento was acknowledged as one of the official languages, of course, besides Dutch. And in 2007, the Netherlands Antilles at the time acknowledged also Papiamento and English as official languages of the Netherlands Antilles, and of course in both cases besides Dutch. So Dutch remains as one of the official languages, but Papiamento, Papiamentu are official as well, and in the case of the Netherlands Antilles, English. And of course, this had a lot of implications after the political reforms of 10-10-10, when some of the islands became European municipalities, but they have different official languages. So this debate is going on, of course, on a political level, societal level, in all the different sectors of society. But today, well, let me go on with the next bullet. Dutch is the language of administration, of course, within the kingdom to communicate with the European part and also the communication between the islands. But it's also the language of the judiciary and in many other formal domains, including education. And that's, of course, what we're going to hear much more about today, this afternoon. So let me see. I didn't know exactly how to put this. Finally, I thought I would call this traditional language policy in education, realizing that it's not completely traditional, because traditionally Dutch was, of course, the only official language within the kingdom, also in, let's say, the education system. But there have been changes, let's say, from the 80s and 90s of the last century, and today we're going to hear much more about the current situation. So, and I'm generalizing now over a lot of different situations. Actually, we have to bear in mind that there are not only differences between the islands, also between school boards and also between individual schools. So now I'm really overgeneralizing because I prepared a lot of slides and then I thought, no, this afternoon is for the people who came from really far away and who are the real experts. So generalizing, we can say that in many cases, Dutch is used, has been used, was used as the main or even the only language of instruction and explanation, especially in secondary education. And secondary education, of course, I mean, this legal framework is largely defined by education laws concerning the final examinations and the final exams that are common within the kingdom. So to my students, I say over and over again, now I finally understood, when I started working in the Caribbean, I understood why the national central final exams, so het Nederlands Centraal Schriftelijk Eindexamen, used to be in the afternoon. Because the same exams were in the Caribbean, right? So here it's 1:30 in the afternoon and then it's 7:30 in the Caribbean. Not for all the subjects, but of course, I mean, the education law actually imposed this kind of legislation and regulations, of course. Especially in secondary education and in primary education, there is more variety. And of course, we all understand tomorrow, I heard the school principals say, it's preaching to the converted, because I think you all realize that one of the major problems is using Dutch as the language of instruction, and Dutch being a foreign language, a language that is actually not present in the community, a language you don't hear and you don't see on the islands. Actually, you can say that the students hardly encounter Dutch outside the classroom. It's used in education, it's used in administration, but we can almost say nowhere else. And that, of course, is causing a lot of problems. So a language they almost never encounter outside the classroom. The consequences, I think we could all talk about the consequences for the rest of the day, right? So I just pointed out a couple of consequences, the systematically lower grades, taking into account that, of course, because of this whole education system that is very European centered, and takes the European Dutch standards, of course, we're hearing over and over again, and this inspection reports point out over and over again that the results are systematically lower compared to students here in the European part of the kingdom. Well, that's no surprise.
Yeah.
Of course, there are high numbers of grade repetition, high numbers of dropouts. Of course, it's a problem that most of the materials actually come from here, come from Holland. So the materials are not contextualized, which creates a lot of alienation amongst the students because they don't identify what is in the school books with the context they actually know and is part of their daily lives, right? So, and of course, I mean, maybe I'm focusing on the students now, but of course we should be aware that exactly the same problems are encountered by the teachers, right? Who are struggling with a situation and starting with, let's say, a European based education system that is incompatible with daily life on the islands. So today we're going to hear much more from several experts. Unfortunately, the expert from Curaçao who was going to join us online wasn't able to make it, but she is one of the founders of the Colegio Erasmo on Curaçao. She founded it together with her husband, the well-known writer Frank Martinez Arion. So, well, I think her name is still on the program. Trudy Huda was supposed to join us online, and they together as a couple founded the Colegio Erasmo, which only uses Papiamento as the main language of instruction, meaning that the other languages, like for example Dutch, are offered as a subject, right, like a foreign language. Okay, so Colegio Erasmo was just a starting point, but it expanded over the years because it was founded in 1987. And nowadays there's also a school for secondary education using Papiamento as the main language of instruction, the Escola Avançada Integral Humanista. And I think 2 or 3 years ago, they also started with a bilingual track, but not Dutch Papiamento, but English Papiamento, right? So that's a quite recent development that actually, well, came almost the same time as the pandemic. Today, we're very happy to have 2 teachers from Seba Comprehensive School. So I'm not going to say anything about Seba Comprehensive School, except the fact that your school is the first certified language-friendly school of the Caribbean joining the network. And of course, we're hoping that this will spread and expand over the whole area. And then we have Regine Cruz, of course, who is going to talk about the Escola Arubano Multilingual, using Papiamento also as the main language of instruction and offering 3 more languages, mainly as foreign languages and second languages. Okay, so I think I'm just going to thank you for your attention and give the floor to the next speaker. I think it's a teacher.